Welcome to Free to Learn. My name is Liam Takurakanenga. I'm your host, and this is a weekly production brought to you by the Zimbabwe National Students Union in collaboration with the Danish Students Federation. And today we'll be discussing leading the union in a torn democracy. And to discuss this topic, I'm joined by the Zimbabwe National Students Union Secretary General Tapiwanashe Chiriga. Tapiwa, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much.
Okay, so Tapiwa, can you give us a brief or an abstract description of the Zimbabwean political situation?
So the Zimbabwean political situation is number one, volatile, number two, tattered and torn, number three, toxic, and unfortunately heading towards a catastrophe.
Tell me, how does it then speak to the livelihood of a student, and what's your prescribed reaction to it?
So one needs to understand that politics is both ubiquitous and inevitable, and it will speak obviously to the lived, concrete and material conditions of the masses of our people. And before a student enrolls at any institution of higher learning, they are a citizen. And in Zimbabwe, unfortunately, we live, eat and breathe politics, unfortunately, because our politics has become toxic and they transcend and intertwine with every other sphere of a student's life, because they are very much determinant on issues around the economy, determining on issues around even the social life and how things are done in this country. So a student's life is obviously determined a lot by the political sphere we are living under.
In the end, you spoke about how the economy or how politics affects the economy and how it speaks to the concrete realities of the masses. So how, in what minute ways can it affect the student, especially, and what then gives the incentive for the student to react to the status quo?
Firstly, obviously, you would know that our politics has destroyed the economy.
Yes.
It has destroyed the social fabric in itself. So those are the elements that define the life of a student on campus, the total life of a student on campus. For example, the economy of the country, when it is in tatters, when it is torn, when it is in the dire straits, you would know that a student would find it very difficult to afford tuition. A student would find it very difficult to meet the costs that define the entire and total day of a student on campus. You would know that even the mental and social well-being of a student on campus can be very much affected by the toxicity of our politics.
Yes, also gauging with that, we have seen that there's a rising number of students dying to suicide and some succumbing to depression. And then, so given that, with all the incentive it brings, what is your prescribed reaction to status quo?
Obviously, it is out of poverty. The Zimbabwean crisis in itself is taking a lot of lives. It is taking a lot of mental health patients. It is taking hostage a lot of students right now.
So given that, where do you expect to get restitution in terms of addressing all these issues?
In a normal society, everything rests on its leadership. Like everyone else would say, the fish rots from the head. So if there is a crisis in leadership in Zimbabwe, the life of a student in itself would equally be affected, just like the life of any other citizen in this country. So we look forward to having a leadership that cares, a leadership that knows that out there are citizens, there are students whose lives are affected daily by the ways they are getting their wealth, by the ways they are looting this country, by the ways they are destroying this country and pillaging its resources.
Okay, so in other words, you saying that where you expect to get restitution, or where you expect to get the issues addressed, is a futile cause because the leadership are the ones perpetuating status quo.
Of course, there is only one solution, of course.
I'm very curious to hear it.
There is only one solution. I am a leftist.
Yes.
A revolution, a total social, political revolution that ushers in a new leadership, a new way of doing things in Zimbabwe.
So, out of interest, I would like to understand, or the people would like to understand, what role then does the student play in this revolution?
Of course, we remain guided by the words of our icon and former president, the late Lenmo Judah Jongwe, whose ideas, I believe, still live and who outlive a lot of us today. Students the world over are known for two things: initiating and leading revolutions. Okay,
so you mean that students themselves are at the center of leading this revolution, or at the center of starting it? And then with that as well, we want to understand then what are the interests to secure on the part of the student, apart from the broader national question. But what are those minute interests that the student has to protect in this revolution?
Of course, you would know that as the Zimbabwe National Students Union, we remain guided by our vision of an inclusive, democratic Zimbabwe where students' concerns are addressed adequately and academic freedoms are upheld.
Okay, so then Tapiwa, what qualities does a student possess? What qualities does Tapiwa possess? What qualities does someone who is enrolled for a degree program at MSU, GZU, Harare Polytechnic, NAST have in order to be the one, in fact, that qualifies them as the ones to lead this revolution?
Okay, number one, you should know that at least 97% of the students we have in this country are young people.
Yes.
So we are the ones with much to lose. We are the generation whose future is getting stolen right now. We are the generation whose present was stolen before we were even born. We are the generation whose children's future we want to protect. So yes, number one, because we are young people. Number two, because the students are the paragons of intellectual dexterity, and they are, of course, the measure of consciousness in any society. So it is incumbent on us, because it is expected of us, to lead in answering the national question, the broader national question of the land and of the day.
How best do we get the students to be interested in taking up the leadership space in pursuing this revolution?
Firstly, it is critical to know that whenever you want to lead people, or you purport to be leading people, you have to know that you have to speak to their concrete and live the realities. You have to make sure that your messaging in itself speaks to the material conditions of the young people and of the students in particular.
Okay, so definitely it's all about how they're packaging the message and how they understand the context.
Yes.
You have explicitly qualified why the student, or you have explicitly explained why the student deserves to take part. But then, why then should it be the students under ZINASU pursuing this revolution?
Firstly, I have to say, because number one, the Zimbabwe National Students Union is the only students union in the country. That is not in dispute.
Yes.
Number one. And number two, ZINASU in itself has a history of fighting tyranny and dictatorship. You remember that in the late 1980s, ZINASU stood firm when it was not exactly fashionable to do so, fighting Robert Mugabe's project of a one-party state. ZINASU in the early 2000s fought vehemently with other progressive comrades in the civil society organization sector. They fought vehemently under the banner of the National Constitutional Assembly against Robert Mugabe's attempt to amend the constitution to increase executive powers. So we have a history of fighting tyranny, we have a history of fighting dictatorship, we have a history of protecting the democracy of this country. So yes, why the question why ZINASU arises, but it has been adequately answered by history itself. ZINASU has a record of fighting even when it's not fashionable to do so.
You have literally told us a plethora of historical events that ZINASU has been at the forefront. And literally you have gave the picture that the revolution is already ongoing. So now Mugabe is gone, and in fact Mugabe is gone and he's dead, and
you should know that Robert Mugabe is not gone. He lives among us now. Because Robert Mugabe, that frail old man, was inconsequential in 2016-2017. But Robert Mugabe, the idea, the system, the strength lives, and it was strengthened in 2017. So Robert Mugabe is very much with us, he's very much in charge now, and that is the same Robert Mugabe we're fighting, the system that he created, the culture of governance that he created, the culture of impunity, the culture of murder, tyranny, looting and corruption that he created is exactly the culture that we're fighting today as ZINASU.
Okay, so literally you said his philosophy, Mugabeism, still exists, and it's manifest even in the not so new Republic of Emerson Mnangagwa. So given that context, what is to be done?
Yes, it's the Lenin question, and I always love it when you ask that. But to answer it, what is to be done is simple: a political and social revolution that is led by young people, with students in particular at the forefront.
Okay, and definitely with that revolution being led, what are the expected deliverables?
We expect, as students, as ZINASU, from the side of the students, we expect an inclusive, a just, an equal, and democratic Zimbabwe, where opportunities are abound, but not only abound and many, but they are equally accessed by every citizen in this country, and where students' concerns are addressed adequately and swiftly, and academic freedom is rife and protected.
What is the incentive that the students have in pursuing this revolution you spoke about?
Firstly, you should know that we are emboldened by the fact that ours is a cause that is just, ours is a cause that is patriotic, and ours is a cause that speaks to the material conditions of every living human in this country, including those who are oppressing us. They don't understand and appreciate how good Zimbabwe can be for them and us too. But to answer to your question, this is a Zimbabwe that is good for all of us, to all of us, and it is about everyone. It is for the many, not for the few. This is a Zimbabwe where water, clean water, in its basic form, is available to everyone. Education is free for everyone, for those who seek to attain it. Health is available for everyone who seek to have it. I think you have seen how catastrophic it is, particularly in the era of this pandemic, where health services are not exactly free, health services are not exactly available to everyone. So this is the Zimbabwe that we seek, a Zimbabwe where all basic social services are available for everyone for free. This is a Zimbabwe where young people and the old alike can access opportunities. This is a Zimbabwe which is inclusive. This is a Zimbabwe whose policies are youth inclusive. This is a Zimbabwe that even speaks to the material even conditions of those who are living with disabilities, even to the minorities in itself. It offers opportunity to everyone. It makes sure that it takes care of all of its citizens.
Okay, Tapiwa, and then within that, we also want to know, what's your call to action? What do you mobilize around for the students in terms of pursuing the revolution that delivers the Zimbabwe you described?
Yes, I know that whenever we say revolution, people think of valiant acts that are probably in their minds out of their capacities to perform. But I have news for everyone watching right now. You don't need to perform the most valiant of acts. You don't need to perform what you might term great acts. But what constitutes a revolution, what constitutes every other great and historical act that has happened in this country and even in the world, is the fact that every citizen, wherever they are in their localities, they can lead a revolution. How do they do that? Number one, by making sure that they join other progressive forces. In the context of the students, joining a students' union. In this instance, the only students' union is Zimbabwe National Students' Union, seeking transparency, seeking accountability, and holding all duty bearers to account. It doesn't matter it's the Student Representative Council, it doesn't matter it's the Member of Parliament, it doesn't matter it's the member of the local council. It's about seeking accountability, seeking transparency, and making sure that you hold those who have some semblance of power, from the SRC to the president of the country, to account.
Okay. So literally, it's always about standing up where they are, and it's always about playing their little parts for the bigger picture.
Yes, it becomes greater in its collective form.
Okay, thank you very much, Tapiwa, and thank you for quite an insightful discussion today around leading the union in a torn democracy.
Thank you very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, this was Tapiwanashe Isaac Chiriga, the Zimbabwe National Students Union Secretary General. My name is Liam Kanenga. I'm your host. This was Free to Learn, a weekly production brought to you by the Danish Students Federation in collaboration with the Zimbabwe National Students Union. See you next time.